Is motorcycle travel the new van life on social media? And with that, welcome back to the Free Miles MC, and you've got me. I have a motorcycle YouTube channel, and usually I do big motorcycle trips, but deep down I'm kind of a van life type guy. Usually not in this, but in this. It's my family's family car, 500,000 kilometers on the clock, and usually still going. But this time, while taking a small recovery break from YouTube, something in the diesel particle filter went wrong and I broke down. So now I'm here with this. And when driving this, I all of a sudden realized actually the movement of how van life behaved over the last 10 years on social media is pretty similar of what motorcycle travel is going through now. I think it's definitely a discussion worth having, especially with seeing the pitfalls that hashtag van life later fell into. And I also want to get into why even if this is happening, you can still enjoy motorcycle travel and van life on a budget. So let's go. And with that, welcome back to the Free Miles MC. I mean, when it comes to van life, it's pretty much clear to everyone that van life is not how it seems on social media, and it turned from an affordable way to travel to an unaffordable influencer hellscape. And like van life in the past 10 years, now in the last 5 years, we've seen the start of a huge push for motorcycle travel on social media. And also with the growth on social media, of course, the influencers came along, and a good way to make views is always to have the latest, newest stuff. And with that, we kind of come to the social mediaification of motorcycle travel and the lust for consumption. Like how it happened with van life, the lust for consumption went from small affordable vans to just insane sprinter builds that no one could actually afford anymore. And we're kind of moving into the same direction with like the big travel enduros that you see all over the place on social media. And with this thought of just like having and more, you get insane price tags on travel enduros nowadays. And luckily not yet on the used market. I hope that is not something that we have coming, as basically you cannot buy any shitty van that's completely rusted through for under 10,000 bucks now. You already see in the new market that the push for this kind of stuff is there. And of course the usability does not really back up your actual purchase. With van life that has been the case. Now that I actually drove one of these for the first time, as I used to do like all my trips in a small little station wagon with just like a bed built into the back. This in comparison is way too big. Of course, the extra space in here is nice, but if you think of the actual usability, it's very quickly lost when going surfing somewhere in the west of France. You're not able to access the beaches properly, and I basically only got this as it was the only rental that was able to fit the boards, and the usability is just not there. You also cannot find parking. With my VW, I always was able to squeeze into the small parking spots where other people were too afraid to have the bravery for the gap, and you could always squeeze in. Not with this one. Similarly, in motorcycle travel, the lust for consumption is overshadowing the actual use of like a motorcycle for motorcycle travel when it comes to a lot of electronic gadgets that when they break can be very catastrophic, and the very heavy bikes that no one can really lift when it comes to especially off-road riding, what often this kind of stuff is actually catered to. Honestly, I think in both of these cases, this is because people desire what they see.
Our desires are artificial. We have to be taught to desire.
And sadly, like it was with van life, everyone can do van life in their normal car, like I used to do for a long time. And we have the same with motorcycle travel now, that people just assume that you need the big enduro. Like how often do I have people in the comment section being like, Miles, do I really need a big enduro to do these kind of trips? And it's like, no, you don't. But like people desire what they see at the end of the day. Sadly, as it used to happen for van life, this of course, for many people that are interested in it, also makes the barrier of entry a lot higher for people to actually get into the hobby with those kinds of social media trends, as they think they need the big expensive bike. Let's come to the next point where motorcycle travel could kind of be the new van life on social media, the desire to live on the road. And where do I even start? I really love motorcycle trips and I want to do them as much as possible. But living on the road, like this was a big trend with van life where people were like, oh yeah, we're now fully living in our vans. I did that in a VW Passat together with a friend for 6 months and also for over half a year in a Holden Commodore in Australia. It was doable, but honestly, there are many pitfalls that if you look at this for like living forever on the road, it just makes it a terrible situation. And the same kind of goes for motorcycle travel. Since channels like Itchy Boots took off on social media, a lot of people have the fantasy of, I want to live on the road. But many influencers, no matter how much you try to be authentic, this is also a pitfall of my videos 100%. You don't see everything that happens outside of a 15-minute YouTube video. You see all the good, you see all the bad, but you don't see all the weird, boring in between. You don't see the bad nutrition. You don't see the bad sleep. You don't see the lack of socialization with the people around you, lack of friends, lack of relationship, trouble in relationship that you have at home. Like, that's all the stuff that's kind of left out on these videos. And if you constantly live on the road, those problems will become enormous. And it's something that is so easily forgot when talking about this. Let's face it, living on the road, doing van life or motorcycle travel, in both cases is not as desirable as it seems. Like, not in the slightest. The only thing that can kind of get you going when you actually live on the road for a certain time is an intrinsic motivation. And sadly, that is often kind of lost in the content, as many people who do these types of videos love content creation. Of course, myself too. So it's always an intrinsic motivation to get like a good shot and to make movies, as many people who do this kind of stuff love filmmaking. And of course, then the intrinsic motivation that someone would need who then replicates this at home sometimes can be lost. Like, because as with van life, a lot of people forget that motorcycle travel on its own is not 100% a thing. I think that's quite a controversial take, and you can tear me apart for it in the comments. But a motorcycle is a vehicle that gets you places, and you still need all the in-between of what you're doing when you get to a place, what you want to do, what you want to reach. This can just be simple wanderlust, but there needs to be something outside of the, oh, I want to do motorcycle travel. The only reason that I even got into van life in the first place a few years back was because I wanted to go surfing. And that was always the main driving force. I never considered myself a guy who's into van life, but a surfer, first of all. And this is really where you see how then consumption from social media is like overshadowing the actual experience of something. Because I remember myself, when it comes to surfing, I was on many camping grounds and used to hang out with a lot of people who are also like doing this kind of stuff. And at some point it started that people got more and more focused on their vehicles and what kind of crazy van builds they came up with. And at some point it reached its climax with people calling me not a real surfer because I don't have the nice van but sleep in my VW Passat. And the same thing is sadly happening to motorcycle travel, because on every motorcycle trip I do, there's always that one guy who laughs at me for not riding a travel enduro, for not having a big navigation tower and being completely decked out in the latest adventure riding gear. But let's be honest, we all can do these things with the stuff that we already have. And just as the notion that you need to build out a big VW truck or a big Mercedes Sprinter, you don't need the big adventure bike. You don't need a dedicated motorcycle for this job, because motorcycle travel is something you do a few weeks out of the year. I, as someone who has a motorcycle YouTube channel who does a lot of motorcycle traveling, I still don't do enough that I can justify the purchase when it comes to my daily life, just as much as I cannot justify the purchase of a real van. I think the reason why van life has become the prime example of this kind of trend is because people forgot what doing this kind of stuff is about completely. No one needs the big van build to do these kinds of things. I went to every surf beach in like Western Europe, and I had such a good time just in like a simple VW Passat with a mattress, fridge, some cooking supplies, and I was even able to bring a friend with me. So I think if that doesn't prove it, and like I actually then put the effort into building like a small little setup into a Holden Commodore and traveled all across Australia with it, I never noticed the limitations of what I was doing. And sadly, this trend is like slowly picking up in motorcycle travel as well. And to me it's absurd, because when it comes to both things, motorcycle travel and van life, it is something where people who were able to throw a lot of money at problems started copying things that like people with less income were doing, and like idealizing the struggle of it, but then like not wanting to experience the struggle and threw all the money at it. Like from people with work vans of their enterprises that then used them to travel, to like bikers who used their motorbikes to go to nice destinations for camping. And it's so absurd because like a few decades ago, many like older bikers told me this, like they were not really allowed to stay on camping grounds because people did not accept them. Both things used to be counterculture being adopted by people with loads of cash to spend. It went to a point where the lust for consumption is bigger than the actual joy of enjoying life. And I hope so much that this trend that we're currently heading down also with motorcycle travel will not continue like this. With van life, it has gotten so bad that people pay over 10 grand for like really rusted through 400,000 kilometer on the clock trucks. And like people who actually don't have a lot of money who then do the same are now riding around in like station wagons with Bluetooth and heated seats, as that is the stuff that you can like buy, as these cars are already 16, 18 years old that have these types of things. And I'm very scared of motorcycle travel moving down the same path, as we kind of already saw with like choppers. Choppers are like, no matter what kind of metric cruiser you're looking into, or like God forbid a Harley, they're incredibly expensive, and I would be very sad to see the same thing happen to used ADV bikes. And I think as a message for this video, it's really important to remember that how much money you spend on your motorcycle does not dedicate how much you live life. And I think as a good example is, I did like loads of trips on this channel. To Morocco, to Iceland, to Italy. I did a motorcycle surf trip, and I even bought like a Royal Enfield Interceptor for 4 grand for that. And with all the money I've now spent on the channel, including like all the camera stuff and extra like money that was needed for editing and so on, I could barely buy an adventure bike. I could have done everything that I did now on this channel, or buy a nice Tenere, basically. Seriously, look at the almost 200 videos on this channel by now and decide what was it worth more, the Tenere or having lived all these experiences. If you see very cool videos of motorcycle adventure riders on social media and you want to be like them, you want to be the big ADV bike rider who experiences crazy things on the open road, who just conquers terrain and goes to all these different places, I think it's very important to remember coolness and authenticity is free. You can just do it. If you now have a bike in the garage and you just get out there and you start doing your trip, you are the closest you're ever going to get to what people are trying to buy when buying an ADV bike. I remember when I wanted to start this like motorcycle YouTube channel, I knew I needed a bike. So I bought a bike for 500 bucks. I bought a tent for 14 bucks. And then I got going to Morocco, and I experienced the first night camping, the first time driving so far on the motorcycle, experiencing the heat, experiencing driving through the Pyrenees, experiencing driving through the Banderas Reales with my first time riding off-road, and then driving through a sandstorm, and then driving all like through Morocco and getting into Morocco into some really sketchy shit that I'm happy that I walked away from.
Not push your brother. Give him the key.
And making my way back. And I think that's good stories don't start with you spending 15 grand on something. If it's a motorcycle you desire and you have the money, go for it. But like really, if you desire the life that's behind it, rather live that first. With motorcycle traveling, moving around the same road as van life, I think it's really important to occasionally also switch off the social media and just get out there and experience the things and don't measure yourself to anything else. Like the best stories are of people who just did the stuff that they desired. I recently met an older couple who watches my channel, and they told me about their motorcycle trip that they did in the 80s. The guy had a Yamaha 250, and he just took his then girlfriend on the back, and who's now his wife, almost like over 40 years later actually, and they drove all the way down to the Pyrenees and to Barcelona and everywhere in jeans and a wax jacket on an old Yamaha 250. So I think those are the experiences that you're truly looking for. And apparently even big media is waking up to this reality, as the next Long Way Round film is supposed to happen on 30-year-old used motorcycles. So yeah, at the end of the day, people with less income are truly like deciding what people with a lot of money spend their money on. Let's try to keep the real side of motorcycle travel alive and not fall down the same like pit that van life went down, and remember that like it's not really chasing the bigger and bigger, more gadget-orientated, more expensive motorcycle and having the illusion of the perfect life on the open road, but it's getting out there and experiencing it firsthand. And with that, thank you for watching, and if you have a motorcycle that you would like me to review, definitely feel free to write me an email. I would gladly appreciate it. It helps keeping the channel going. And definitely also like and subscribe, and check out the links in the description to the Patreon, and see you guys in the next video.